There's a specific kind of quiet that settles in around midnight. Not peaceful, not restful, just still. The house is asleep. The phone is dark. And somewhere between the end of one day and the beginning of another, a thought creeps in that you've been successfully avoiding since morning. Everyone else seems to know what they're doing. You don't say it out loud. You haven't said it out loud in years. But it's there. That low, persistent hum. Beneath every decision you second-guess. Beneath every LinkedIn profile you close a little too quickly. Beneath every conversation where someone mentions their 5-year plan and you smile and nod while something goes still. You're not lazy. You know that. You're not unintelligent. You know that too. But somewhere along the way, the life you imagined and the life you're living started moving in different directions. And you've spent a long time pretending not to notice the gap. Let's start where most videos won't. Not with your career, not with your bank account, not with any external measurement of where you should be by now. Let's start with the feeling. You think about the men you grew up with. Some of them seem settled now. Certain, like they found a frequency and locked onto it. You don't envy their things. You envy their apparent peace. The way they seem to know they're exactly where they should be. And then there's you. You've changed jobs, maybe changed cities, maybe changed the entire direction of your life more than once. Each time, you told yourself it was necessary. You told yourself you were evolving, which might even be true. But the voice in the back of your mind has a different word for it. Wandering. Most men never talk about this voice. Not to their partners. Not to their friends. There's an unspoken agreement among men of a certain age that you're supposed to have it together by now. So you carry the weight in silence. But the body remembers. It shows up as the tension in your shoulders. The strange fatigue that sleep doesn't fix. The irritability that arrives without warning. This isn't weakness. This is what prolonged self-suppression does to a person. Here's something that took psychologists a long time to acknowledge. Men who feel perpetually behind often aren't behind at all. They're in process. Some men develop primarily on the inside, for years, before anything changes on the outside. They're processing, questioning, rebuilding belief systems that were handed to them before they were old enough to evaluate them. And all of this invisible interior work registers on the scoreboard of conventional success as exactly nothing. No promotion, no milestone, no evidence, just a man who seems stuck. These are minds that cannot accept answers that don't feel true. While other people move forward on borrowed certainty, these men are still examining the foundation, still asking whether the building is worth constructing at all. This is not a deficiency, but it costs years. Think about the kind of man who genuinely cannot commit to a life that doesn't feel authentic. Not because he's irresponsible, but because something deep in his architecture rejects the false. Every wrong job, every wrong city, every relationship built on a version of himself he doesn't recognize. An internal alarm keeps going. Other people seem able to simply settle, to decide this is enough, this is me. And there's genuine peace in that. But some men cannot do it, not without a cost they're not willing to pay. The cost is the slow erasure of themselves. So they don't settle. They keep searching. They restart. They disappoint people who thought they had finally figured it out, in pursuit of something they can barely name. Some coherence between the inside and the outside. Some life that doesn't require them to be a stranger to themselves. This is not a failure of discipline. This is the price of a very particular kind of integrity. Now let's talk about comparison, because this might be the most destructive force in the life of a man who peaks late. You see a peer accomplish something, and in a single second, Your mind measures your entire history against his highlight. Not his struggle. Not his doubt. His highlight. And your entire history loses. This happens dozens of times a day. Each comparison deposits a small amount of shame. You barely notice any individual deposit, but they accumulate. Over years, the accumulation covers everything. Your creativity, your confidence, your peace, and perhaps most painfully, your hope. Not dramatically. Slowly. Almost politely. The way fog comes in. What comparison never tells you is that the men you measure yourself against are running a completely different race. The man who built his career by 30 didn't have the years you spent becoming emotionally honest. The man who married early didn't have the solitude you spent learning who you actually are. Every timeline has a shadow side. Comparison only ever shows you one. There's a moment that comes for some men in the most ordinary circumstances. You're washing dishes, sitting in traffic, and a thought arrives, different from the voice that has been narrating your failure. It arrives quietly, without announcement. What if the years I spent lost were actually the years I was being built? Not the years I wasted, the years I was being built. The confusion wasn't deviation from the path. The confusion was the path. The restlessness wasn't a character flaw. It was a compass, pointing you away from everything that wasn't yours. The repeated restarts weren't failures of will. They were acts of radical honesty in a world that rewards performance over authenticity. The late bloomer doesn't arrive late because he couldn't keep up. He arrives late because he refused to arrive as someone else. The version of success most men absorb is fundamentally about speed. Who got there first? Who locked in the career, the family, the security? But what if your finish line is somewhere else entirely? Success, for the man who peaks late, looks less like arrival and more like alignment. The moment when the inside and the outside are finally saying the same thing. When the work reflects something real about who you are. When you wake up and the life in front of you doesn't require you to disappear into it. This isn't a lesser version of success. It might be the harder one to achieve, because it demands that you know yourself. And self-knowledge is not given. It's extracted, painfully, over years, from everything that didn't work. The man who has done this work has something that the man who moved quickly often spends the second half of his life searching for. He has himself. You're not behind. You're just building something that actually has to fit. And that has always taken longer.